Hello, my name is Jack Coster. This is my code review for CS499. The three artifacts I'll be discussing today are my final project for CS360, mobile architecture and programming, my final project for CS300, data structures and algorithms, and my final project for CS340, advanced code operations. The first project here is CS360's final project, which was a weight tracking application built in Java through Android Studio to build a mobile app that allowed users to input a goal weight and then make daily weight progress updates until they reached their goal weight, in which they would be presented with a notification alerting them that they made their goal weight. It also has a user profile, registration, and login functionality. And the three pages I will be reviewing today are my login page, my registration page, and my item activity page, which lets for adding in the weight. All these pages have a front-end view in the XML where we can see the different buttons and text fields and design of the page, and then a Java page for all the code functionality. Starting off, we have the login page where we can see the text fields for email and password, and then the buttons for registration, sign in, and forgetting the password. All these three buttons are connected to functions that query the database, making sure that the fields were filled in, and if the information is wrong, having good error handling, and then going to the forgotten password page or to the registration page. We can see here now in the Java that all of the code is commented and follows great syntax and formatting standards. At the top of each of the code pages in this, I did have a explanation of what the code did and then an author tag into what course it was. I did like inside Android Studio that you could see how connected everything were and where the usage was once we defined the different variables up here. And what where those buttons are, and the different strings and different item fields that were put into the application. You can see in here as we're defining our different fields for the password, email, registration, sign-in buttons, and so on. I did, like I said, add a lot of comments to this, sometimes maybe too many, but you can definitely see everything that is going on and what each button does there. These buttons do have listeners on them waiting for commands and will not go forward without hitting the sign-in button there. I did have error handling attached to these buttons to show that text messages that say user email is empty or the password is empty and so on. And this does connect to a SQL database. You can see here that when we are doing the login function, that it takes in the email and password, and then that makes sure that the database is ready, and then make sure that was not empty. All the different functions in this are closed out and do work correctly. All the if-else statements are closed correctly, and there is no errors in this code for these functions. There are some temp names and passwords in there in this that can be used if needed. We do have going on, like I said, the function for making sure that everything is not empty, everything is filled in and is not empty. So in this, you can see that it does provide error handling if it is seen to be true, saying that the email is empty or that the password is empty. There is a checking for the final result here to make sure that the email and password are put in and that the database returns back that it was successful, and that let the user log in and pull up their data. We do have some error handling here for if it was incorrect for both the username or password. A lot of the functions in this application are reused throughout the different pieces and views, so you will see a lot of the similar code here. And a lot of these were based off of the code that was presented to us from the sample applications. So enhancement-wise, I definitely could add more security protocols to the password, either through two-factor authentication or making sure that the password requirements were more stringent for adding additional characters or uppercase and lowercase letters, because I did not believe I had anything like that put into the password here. This was just to test out to see if it would take a username and password. Next, if the person using the application hit register, they would be taken to the registration page, which looks like this. And again, when it makes the user for the first time, put in a first name, or put in a name, a phone number, email, and password. These fields I would like to edit to have a first and last name, phone number, email, password, and then any other details they would like to add, potentially like a starting weight, and then any other workout details or food intake details is one of the potential enhancements that I'll discuss later. Inside of the Java here, like I said, I used a lot of the same formatting across the board for introducing the page, and then, like I said, importing all the different dependencies and libraries, and then defining the different pieces here. This was my first time making an Android application, so I did use a lot of sample and pre-built code blocks here that I edited to make my own. So I definitely could make those more enhanced and add some additional functionality here, but you'll see across the board that everything kind of follows the same structure throughout the different views. Again, making sure that all the buttons are defined and checking to see if they are empty. When we start, for importing the user into the database, we have to convert those entries into strings for the name, phone number, email, and password. Again, would like to add more stringent password things, as well as maybe a starting weight to save that value as well. Again, we use a check for making sure that nothing is empty, and if there is anything empty, hitting back with an error message to make sure the user puts that in before they hit submit and before it gets stored into the database. Again, there's a lot of comments here on the code, and that is consistent throughout. All the functions handle as they should, and I did not notice any errors when registering an email to the database. We do a check to make sure if the email is found or not, just like on the login where it queries the database. And if the email is found here, then it won't register that new user. Again, we have some empty checks, and then there is a clearing there once to empty it. Next, we have the actual item page where we go and enter in the daily weight that you can see here. This page is pretty basic and would be the focus of one of my enhancements for this, to go and make maybe a graph to show a charting line of the daily weights as they are inputted so you can see progress, as well as the ability to put in different tracking metrics for food intake or different workouts that you see in other fitness applications like MyFitnessPal or Apple Health. These buttons are attached in a couple different pages here, but we'll take a look at them here in the customer items list. In here, again, follows the same syntax as before, integrating all those different positions for where it sits on the page, as well as seeing it over here, where you can see that we define those different fields for the description, how much of the weight and everything in the unit that's used, as well as any other fields. I have some like unused entries in here. Like I have another block for the email, which is not really needed. I could clean up this code a lot. For the item page, like I said, to want to add more functionality for adding those different things in there, and then commenting out some things that are not needed here, like the email. But the constructor functions and how it finds everything here follows the same syntax as the other pages, and this is all functional. The bottom here could use a little bit more comments to describe what it's doing, but like I said, this page is pretty basic in the XML, so I would add more there, and with that, more explanation and comments down below. And that is it for the CS360 artifact. My next artifact is from CS300, which is Data Structures and Algorithms. This course had two projects that were kind of done in tandem. The first was to design pseudocode and logic for sorting a list of courses through a fake college. The first project had you working with three different sorting methods: vector sorting, binary search tree, and hash tables. And we are advised to go and run through all the pseudocode there to show how that would work, and then to do a runtime analysis on which one would be the best one for a sorting method there. Apologies, I had to pause, my headset disconnected. In my second artifact here, or the second project for CS300, we then took the best method that we found for sorting, which in my case was a binary search tree, and then ran through the sorting of the list for the different courses for this college, and to give a sample menu option through a text application to let a user insert a course, delete a course, sort a course, and see what was available, and this sorted in alphanumeric order. We can see here in the code, this was built in C++. This is a single-page application loading in from a CSV file. My biggest critique of myself in this code is that I could have added a lot more commenting. This one was kind of built off an example project, so I was kind of learning as I went, as this was the first time I had used a application like this. So it does function as intended. I just need to have some comments in here, as a user that was going in to read this code would not really know where any of this was coming from if they did not take the course and knew the background. You can see up top I did initiate by including my different dependencies and libraries, and then we defined the space for the project, and then for the course ID, the course name, and any prerequisites before defining the initial constructor for the binary search tree here, and showing what those different nodes do, and how they are in the different buttons for inserting, removing, and then searching for the course. As we go in, we can see the first binary search tree function here for inserting a course. All these functions do follow good syntax standards, and they all do function as intended, and it doesn't throw any errors when running this. We can see here that when you insert the course, it finds where this current node is situated, and then be able to add one unit to the course list there. These functions aren't very complex, but the data objects themselves don't have a lot of data there besides an ID and a course name. We can see here that the removing of a course function follows a similar structure as the other function, and then as well as there is some data handling down here for if the value is not found. I would like to add more data handling and error messages to the insert function. I think if you did it incorrectly, to add a not inserted correctly, or just other messages there, because this application does not provide a lot of feedback initially for the user when going through it. You can see that as we continue on down below, we now get to the search function in the binary search tree, which looks up by course ID. Again, a pretty simple function, but there wasn't much detail inside this each data entry there, so it doesn't have a lot to search for besides ID and course name. As we continue on below, we can get into how it breaks down the different string data entries there for the names, and then we get into the load course function. And the load course function, again, needs comments to describe what it's doing, but inside this function, we do have error handling if the files can't be opened, but it does find from the CSV path here to go and then find the courses, and then to start to sort them here based off the name and ID. And the display courses, that's where it loads it for the user. And again, continuing on below, we get to the actual sorting that says how it sorts it in alphanumeric order from that CSV path. From the course list, you can see here, these are the different options. We have the load course, hit 1, display course, hit 2, and then so on. This shows here that once you hit the whatever choice you enter in, to then load that up. Once you load into the course and you're done there, we do have an order function here that goes and then puts it into alphanumerical order and then asks the user what course they want to know about, see if there's any prerequisites. It does provide some more feedback down here in terms of the text messages that you do get back, depending on what button you enter in there for the different cases. At the bottom, we do have a goodbye function that once you're done, it does close it out. Again, this code for this project is all functional and follows all standards, but it does need more commenting to describe what is going on. And I do believe that one of my enhancements would be to add a front end to this to give it more depth and more life for the user, not just a basic text menu, but to be able to sort through a table with buttons and maybe filters to put the sorting function to a front end. And that is it for my second artifact. Finally, I have my third artifact from CS340. This project focused on the culmination of building different CRUD routes and connecting to a MongoDB database to build a search dashboard for an animal rescue organization that would show the ability to add, edit, and delete different pets, dogs, and cats from a database that had their name, weight, breed, any other details about them into a searchable dashboard where we could see their location on a map and also a graph to see comparison of number of breeds or species in the database. And this was built inside Jupyter Notebook on the virtual desktop with Python and MongoDB from the command line. The different pieces here is we have the Python file from Jupyter Dashboard that built everything and loaded in the dashboard, as well as some external Python files to define the connection schema and the different pieces of the application. So we'll kind of jump back and forth between the code here to see what's going on. You can see in the dashboard itself initiates by importing all the different libraries and dependencies to render the dashboard, including Plotly and Numpty and Dash. All these do is to be able to render the map and the graph, like I discussed, and to connect to the database. You can see here, this loads in the CSV file that has all the different animal records in it, and then the styles was provided from a standard style sheet. We do have a logo that was provided to us that you can see over here, and then the different table, graph, and map here. Going back to what was included, we can see, and excuse me for these different windows for pulling up the files. In the Python file, you can see this is our database schema for connecting to the Mongo client, and the different CRUD operations for using a username, password, host name, port, database, and the collection name, and how it initiated the Mongo client. Like I said, a lot of this was done through the command line, and a lot of this code was provided from the instructor. So it is commented very well, and I did add a few different comments to describe what was happening. This code does have error handling if the queries are not met and were not successful, excuse me. Continuing onwards, we do have the other part of this in the animal control operation, showing again how the connection is initiated, the different test data for this is how one of the objects looks for an animal record. Again, we have age, ID, type, breed, color, so on and so forth. All the syntax in here follows all correct standards, and it was able to add in a test dog. You can see here a lab mix, and then to be able to query the database to make sure through the shelter.create meth route. And then the final part of this is, like I said, the dashboard. And inside the dashboard, you can see here that there's a couple different items. And when the big part of this was the table and the HTML and CSS that went into the table to be able to pull up on the dashboard here. We could have a little bit more commenting to make sure that someone knew that this was going into the table here, as well if I wanted to add any you can see here the different filters at the top for the different type of rescue situation that was found: a water rescue, a disaster rescue, a mountain wilderness rescue, and then a reset button. The table itself, I was able to get functional. This took a lot of effort to make sure that when clicking on the different type of rescues, that it would function and be able to come down to just those specific types of animals. And there's also a reset button that should bring it back to having everything there. The graph and the map are also contingent on these filters, and those could still use a little bit of functionality, especially the map, for being able to reset and find the next animal. As you can see here, it didn't pull any sort of specific animal when clicking on this. It will go to a different location, but it has not pulling up the animal name. So that's definitely an area I have to improve on and one of the enhancements I want to make to this project. You can see here all the different variables and parameters for the table, for the columns and rows and everything like that. I do think I could add some more styling to this table. As you can see, the layout is not ideal here. The logo is way too big. The table is kind of scrunched together, and then the graph and the map are compressed as well. I would like to add a lot more styling to make this a lot more user-friendly, and add a few other visual enhancements as well that I'll describe. Going down here, you can see that there are some debug functions for the table, telling you if when the layout is set and what type of filter is selected. And you can see these are more table options for going to the filter, making sure that that resets when needed. As we go back down, we have the update graph state function that I was talking about, that uses the PX library that we imported above, to make sure that that is reactive as you click on different types of pets. The map, like I said, needs a bit of work with resetting. I think I was on the right track and may have just run out of time with this project, but the basis for the functionality in these functions are there. That's really the only error that I ran into with this application on the final version, but it does have good error handling, so at least I know where that function is going. You can see down here in Jupyter Notebook that you do get the printout of the different animals that were added in, and their details as well. In terms of enhancements, I would like to update the animal object to be able to have images with it that would display down here once you clicked on an animal or above. So if you added a dog, you'd see the picture of that dog corresponding to the map and then the table as well. This would be done by adding to the CRUD table, the CRUD object for the animal there. And that is my 3 artifacts for the code review. Thank you.